Hi, my name is Kate Purmal, and I'm the author of Composure, The Art of Executive Presence. I'm an expert on imposter syndrome, and it was that expertise that I developed that actually inspired me to write the book Composure, because composure is the end result of what happens after you're able to break through imposter syndromes to develop a more resilient and more grounded and calm presence. I'm here today with Shannon Fisher, who is a content developer at Webflow on their design team. And I'm here with Shannon because she's actually worked with us through some of our workshops that we've done around imposter syndrome and composure. And I wanted to have her be able to speak from the perspective of the creative professional, those that she's worked with internally at Webflow, as well as those that she's worked with externally. So Shannon, you want to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Hi. Thanks so much for having me. As Kate mentioned, I am a content designer, and that means I design with words to make sure the Webflow interface is communicating with our users in the best way possible. I've been in this role for a year, but I've been at Webflow for 4, and I've been in the web industry for 10 and writing online since 1998 when you could make yourself a grilled cheese sandwich while your page loaded. And I'm also feel like I'm an expert on imposter syndrome because I definitely have it. And I'm a big fan of Kate's. So take it away, Kate.
All right, we're going to start with composure, only because it's the end state that we want to achieve once we're able to break through imposter syndrome. So that's where we're going. But first, let's talk about imposter syndrome and how it affects people, particularly creatives like yourselves. We know from our research that imposter syndrome affects approximately 70% of the working population. It is known to be more consistent and more extreme amongst women and those in the out group. In fact, 75% of female executives report frequent experiences of imposter syndrome throughout their career. Now, how do we define imposter syndrome? We define it as despite evident success, an individual perceives their competence to be less than others perceive it to be. And if you want to know if imposter syndrome may be affecting you, you can go to our website, which is www.composurethebook.com. And if you scroll down to the bottom of the homepage, there's a button to take the free assessment. It takes about 3 minutes. But what we're going to do now is just go into describing the individual behaviors associated with imposter syndrome, and then describing that breakthrough to executive presence and what's possible when you break through those behaviors. So we found 5 fingerprint behaviors associated with imposter syndrome. The first is perfectionism. That is unattainable ideals and overworking and over-preparing to try to get a very positive and favorable outcome. The second one is lack of confidence. It's pretty self-explanatory, but it really shows up in a lack of one's perceived ability to rise to a challenge. The third one is depressed entitlement. This is where, because a individual is a member of an out group, so that may be that you're the only woman or the only person of your cultural or racial background or able-bodiedness, or any reason that you are one of the onlys in the room, oftentimes onlys have a feeling of not belonging and not being of the same, deserving of the same things that the others are. As an example, when I started my career, I was a software engineer, and I was the only female software engineer in my multiple companies I worked for, as well as the only female in my engineering classes at a very large university. So I oftentimes felt like I was in the out group, I didn't belong, and almost like it wasn't okay for me to ask questions or to reveal that I didn't know things, because I felt a lot of responsibility and weight around ensuring that I was capable and competent enough to be there. So that's how depressed entitlement can show up. Another, the fourth trait is rejection sensitivity. That's where you're sensitive to criticism or judgment that others may have. This is particularly acute for creative professionals. We know that when you're producing a creative work, there's oftentimes a fear of bringing it out into the world because it's come from your heart and soul and you've really put everything into creating it. And your concern then is how are people going to respond to it or react to it? Will they criticize it? Will they judge it in a way that is, because it's so close to the vest for you, it's so personal. So this is a particularly challenging one for creatives. And then the final one is feeling like a fraud. This is feeling like maybe you don't deserve the success you've achieved or the title or role that you've received. It may be that you think that people don't really know something about you, that you're not as good as they think you are, that you're putting on a good show, or maybe it was some accident or coincidence that got you where you are. This is particularly common in academia. In which people feel as though they can't believe that they got into an elite university or a graduate program when they don't really fully feel deserving of that. So these are the 5 traits associated with the imposter syndrome. Now, there are 5 traits associated with what happens when you unlock that, which is executive presence. And these very much mirror these imposter syndrome traits. So the first one is clarity. This is the ability to communicate clearly and concisely and effectively. And that gets blocked when you're really not able to be confident and composed when you're communicating. The second is credibility, which is creating global trust in your skills and abilities. Obviously, this would not show up if you didn't feel confident, which is the third trait, which is confidence, to project a solid sense of self-esteem and in order to deal with challenges. The fourth is composure, and this is sort of the overarching trait that we've identified. This is being able to control your emotions and recognize the emotions of others and effectively manage the outcomes so that you have that grace under pressure type feeling, or that you're able to bring the temperature down in the room and allow everybody else to operate at a much more calm and grounded pace. And then finally, connection. That's engendering trust and instilling faith in yourself and your leadership. So once you break through imposter behaviors, you're able to open up into executive presence, which is encompassed by these 5 traits. So now that we've introduced this whole concept of imposter syndrome and executive presence and the composure that comes with that, I'd like to actually bring in Shannon and talk to her about her experience as a creative professional with imposter syndrome and what she's also seen working in the creative industry for so many years. So Shannon, thanks again for being here and being willing to talk about this. I'm curious, first of all, for yourself. I know that you have taken the assessment that I talked about earlier, and you've done some work on this. What aspect of imposter syndrome, which of those 5 behaviors are most impactful for you as a creative professional?
Yeah, definitely depressed entitlement is one that resonates deeply with me. Just that feeling of being afraid to reveal what you don't know or make mistakes, feeling like you don't belong. So that's a big one. I score high there.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we hear that often, and we often hear that in really high-performing work environments where people come into these work environments. They may take on a new role or they may join a new team, and suddenly they're working with all these people that they respect and admire so much and who seem to know everything, right? And it's intimidating to ask for help or ask questions because the perception you have is, I should know this stuff. I should already have the answers, right? And in reality, when you're hired into a new role, you're not expected to know everything, right? It's really okay to be able to learn along the way. Are there any other behaviors that you have noticed for yourself and or for other creative professionals that you think might be particularly common?
Yeah, absolutely. Rejection sensitivity is another one that you talked about that I have experienced daily. Just that fear of tying up my self-worth into my work and how others feel about it, and just getting feedback about it, and not being able to separate the feedback about my work from the feedback about who I am as a person.
Oh, thank you so much for that. That is so common amongst creative professionals. And then that in turn feeds some of these other behaviors like perfectionism, right? If you're afraid of getting criticism for your work because it cuts so deep, you're going to overwork and over prepare and do everything you can to make sure it's perfect and that you get really positive feedback. It's also can be tied up in feeling like a fraud. So if you are producing a piece of work that gets negative feedback, you may question whether you're worthy of doing the work that you're doing. And so you can see how these behaviors can all be really tied up. So now let's go into what to do about resolving them. All right, so we've learned about imposter syndrome and how it may affect you and other creatives from Shannon. And now we're going to move on to what we can do about this. How do you resolve this? And to do that, I want to talk about the two identities that are associated with imposter syndrome and also being free of imposter syndrome. So the first identity is a reactive identity. This is triggered by workplace pressures or pressures in your creative world, in which you are often brought back to safety patterning to keep you feeling safe and able to be present in that situation. And when you're in a challenging situation at work or when you're presenting your creative work, you're often having 4 questions you're asking yourself. Do I belong, or am I good enough? Is it okay to make mistakes? Do I really deserve to be here? And am I competent? And when you're reactive, you're looking to the outside world, to external authority to answer those 4 questions. And when most people who are high performers and high achievers approach this situation where they're trying to decide those 4 questions by looking to the outside world, what they do is they become really, really good at getting positive feedback from the outside world. That is praise and acknowledgement, recognition and rewards. And they get really, really good at avoiding negative feedback, which is criticism, rejection, judgment, punishment, or exclusion. And this is particularly challenging, I think, for the creative professionals in the world because you don't control the subjectivity of those that you're presenting your creative ideas to. Now, this dynamic of trying to only get positive feedback and avoid negative feedback at all costs is what sets up this dynamic for imposter behaviors. And the problem is that when you go into that mode, what happens is you get anxious and you get stressed, and this can lead to burnout. This whole dynamic is really unsustainable because it's forcing you to constantly be on high alert in order to avoid the negative and make sure you're doing everything you can to get that positive feedback you're looking for. So what's the alternative? Well, the alternative is to become more resilient and develop a resilient identity. And I know you're probably thinking, well, that sounds great, but that can't be easy. I'm a creative professional. I'm constantly putting my creative work out in the world and people are constantly reacting to it. How do I do that? The first step in doing that, you can't change the fact that there is an external authority out there, that you're always going to be putting your work out in the world. That's just part of the dynamic. But what you can change is your own personal boundary. This is your safe and sacred space around yourself where you decide what to let in and what to keep out. In this way, you're able to make yourself safer when it comes to external feedback or criticism or judgment. Now, if you have really narrow personal boundaries, then when somebody says something about your work or you receive a review of your work, what happens is that comes directly into you and you simply react to it. It is something that you react to and it is a visceral reaction. It happens automatically and you get triggered into a response that's usually something like fight or flight. You panic, you feel like leaving the room, Maybe you get angry or upset about it, but that reaction happens and it happens automatically. When you put personal boundaries in place, you're actually able to look at what is here and hold some space so you don't have to react to that. And the way you do that is by developing a sense of what we call internal authority. That is the authority based on what you know to be true, what you know you stand for, what you're deserving of, and what you're entitled to. So in other words, you may be looking at this space and feeling this space when you work on your personal boundaries, knowing that you're a really dedicated, committed, creative professional, and you're committed to producing high quality work, that you do your best to ensure that your work stands for the kind of quality and design excellence that is demanded by your clients or the others in your workplace and yourself. And you're deserving of having your work be respected, even if somebody doesn't resonate with it or their subjective opinion about it is different than yours, that you deserve respect for the work that you've done. And you're entitled to be proud of that and to represent it and own the fact that for you, this work has meaning and it has resonance. And when you develop strength in that way with your personal boundaries, you're able to take any feedback that comes in with curiosity, with actually greater confidence because you've loaded up the things you know to be true that leads to that internal sense of confidence, and with self-compassion, so that you recognize that things might come in that don't feel good or that are hurtful, but that you're okay. It's okay. It's okay. They're entitled to their opinion. And in this way, you're able to manage what you let in and what you keep out, even if it's only for a few seconds or a few minutes or a few days. We have somebody that we're working with who is really sensitive to performance review feedback. And she just needed the permission to not read her performance review until she felt ready for it. So the idea is you want to keep things out that you're really not ready to take in until you're ready to take them in. This is true for positive and or negative feedback. The final piece here in terms of developing a resilient identity is to actually have another set of authorities, and that's a higher authority. This is the higher perspective on what's in the highest and best good for everybody. So if you're in a meeting where you're bringing a design forward to a team, what's in the highest and best good is that you're able to really present your design and the rationale behind it effectively, and that others are able to ask questions of you and get clarity around it and give you feedback. And that collectively, what's in the highest and best good is that both the sides of this equation work together to produce the highest quality outcome you can do. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it puts into perspective the fact that coming to that discussion with a strong sense of internal authority and strong personal boundaries actually improves the outcome for everyone involved. All right, Shannon's back, and she has graciously agreed to do something we call a brain hack, which is a technique to try to break through some of these imposter behaviors. So Shannon, are you ready?
I'm ready.
I promise it'll be painless. It'll be, yeah, we're gonna make it painless, and hopefully it'll help to make things better going forward. But it'll also be really generous for you to be able to share this with other people, because in the audience, when you're watching this, you get the opportunity to imagine yourself going through this while Shannon's going through it, and actually have it be something that could give you a breakthrough as well. Okay, so Shannon, the first step is to imagine a situation that might be coming up or that's common for you, where you might get triggered into being reactive and where some of these imposter behaviors might start showing up. Tell me about such a circumstance for you.
Yeah, definitely. We have weekly meetings with the team where we're doing design critiques. We sometimes call them mess halls, where we're just sharing our work in its unfinished stages. And my brain really freezes up in both the the critiquing other people's work and sharing my own work, because I just feel like everything I have to say is going to sound ridiculous or not smart, or I'm going to open my mouth and sound like I don't know what I'm talking about. And in sharing my work in its early stages, it's just very intimidating to imagine people giving me feedback. And I'm very sensitive to the feedback because I'm thinking, if they share something that I didn't think of, then I want to make it mean that I'm not any good at this. I don't belong here. I couldn't have gotten this position in the first place. Everyone's thinking horrible things about me. So it's just, and then it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because I'm stuck in my head and stumble over my words and end up everything I'm worried about happens.
Wow, thank you so much for being so transparent with that and so vulnerable in describing that feeling. What Shannon's describing is something that happens when we're reactive, which is when we receive something that is that's criticism or judgment, we go into this sort of primitive part of us goes into fight or flight. It's as though we're being attacked, right? And so this thing about sort of, it's almost like your brain shuts off. You can't really take it in. You probably pulse increases. You might start your heart. So yeah, it becomes this whole physiological thing, right? That's really uncomfortable. And I would imagine it's hard to face that every week, to go into that feeling anxious. There's probably anxiety leading up to it. And then you go through it and then you're like, whew, I survived it. But I'm not sure in that process, because of being on high alert, how much of it you're able to actually take in and benefit from.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a lot of these meetings on Tuesdays, and I end up just dreading Tuesdays, Monday nights. I'm having the Tuesday scaries.
Tuesday scaries,
yeah.
So what would you like instead? What would you like the experience to be?
I guess it feels like these meetings could potentially just be a lot of fun, a time to just like really connect with my team, enjoy the process of learning about what they're doing, sharing what I'm doing, getting the advantage of using each other's brains and what we know collectively together. And just like I want to have fun, and I want to receive the feedback with goodness and gratitude, and not tie it up into my own self-worth. I just want to relax and enjoy it.
Thank you for that. That sounds wonderful. And it sounds like in that state, you'll get so much more out of it. And that's the intention, right? The intention of these meetings is for people to bring things in, to collaborate, to have design ideas build on top of each other, and to have you walk out with more, not less, right?
Yeah, that sounds wonderful.
Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, here's the brain hack. Okay, Shannon,
Right.
I would like you to imagine a Shannon who's sitting right next to you, one side or the other, you choose. She is exactly like you in every single way. Same life experiences. She's got the same job, got the same home situation. Everything is exactly the same. So can you imagine her for a moment?
Yeah.
She's your clone. Where is she? Point to her.
Yeah, she's right here.
She's right there. Okay, cool. All right, so here's what I want to know about that Shannon over there. See, here's the deal with her. You know that part of you that worries about going into those meetings and that has that dreaded experience up in the meetings and has all of that reaction to the feedback and doesn't get to do the things that you would like to do, which is to have fun and enjoy it. So that part of her, that part of you, we've taken out of her. We've actually done a little mini lobotomy and taken that part out of her. So she never even has those thoughts. Doesn't even occur to her to have any dread about the meeting or any anxiety. It doesn't occur to her to react and be sensitive to the feedback. She's able to just be present in the meeting and participate and contribute and take and receive and walk out of it feeling like, wow, that was super fun. All right?
Okay.
So let's look over at her. And the first thing I want to know is when she wakes up for breakfast, when she wakes up on Tuesday morning, how is her morning different than your morning?
She's chill. She's done her morning walk and she's spent that time just like really looking forward to seeing her colleagues and finding out what they're up to, and so excited to share what she's been thinking about and what she's working on and getting their input, because she knows that she does work with a team of such smart, generous people. So she knows that they're going to find, the the holes in her thinking and contribute more, and she's just going to be super excited to have that information and that feedback to make her work better.
Oh, that sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Have your Tuesday morning be that way. Okay. And now let's put her in the meeting. We're just test driving that, Shannon, right? We're
Okay.
going to put her in the meeting now, and we're going to have her present her ideas, and
Mhm.
maybe she gets some critical feedback from them. So tell me what goes on in her head when she gets that critical feedback on her design work.
Yeah, I think she she's able to stand back and look at the work and what the person is saying and apply it to her work, and keep it from sinking into who she is as a person and her value in this situation. So she really hears what her teammate is saying. She really hears it. And she gets a chance to decide if what she thinks of it. She doesn't just take it and think, oh, this is the ultimate truth and I have to now change what I'm doing. She's like, what do I think of this? So she takes a pause and she listens, and she's curious. She's so curious. Um, and she's just really chill about it
Mm-hmm.
and grateful.
And
She's really
grateful.
grateful.
And let's talk about our personal boundaries for a minute. This idea of the part of her that can keep feedback out or let it in. Tell me, if your hands represented her personal boundaries around her, where would your hands be for her? Right about there.
Yeah, probably somewhere in there.
Right. So the feedback comes in. She's like, She can see it. She can
Yeah.
decide if she wants to do anything with it, and then decide to let it in. And for you, not her, when you're in those meetings, where are your boundaries?
Oh yeah, they're just like behind me probably.
Okay. So she's got her boundaries out. She's got a really good, healthy sense of personal boundaries. She's able to decide what she lets in and what she keeps out. Okay. I'm super curious about what she knows to be true about herself in order to be able to take all of that feedback and meet it with curiosity.
Yeah. She knows that she's wonderful to work with. She knows that she has everything she needs to learn and grow. And part of that is being on a collaborative team. She knows that doing better means getting feedback and considering it. She knows that she's safe and that there's enough to go around for everyone. She doesn't have a scarcity mindset.
Mm-hmm. So there's enough room for many people to be successful and brilliant at what they do.
Yeah.
And yes, that's so interesting. And what does she know about her colleagues? What does she know to be true about them that might be a little different than the you, Shannon, the
Mhm.
non-clone Shannon?
She knows that they're on her team, that they want to see her succeed as much as she wants to succeed. She knows that they are just human too, and also, live with fear and, um, that worry that they're also not enough, and we're all just like here collectively doing our best and holding each other up. And
Mm,
um, yeah, she knows that they're wonderful, good people who are in her cheering section.
that's right. They've got her back,
Yeah.
even though in that moment it might not feel like it, right?
Hmm.
Oh, that's so great. And then finally, when you look at this from a higher perspective, so you, Shannon, looking at the clone Shannon with the brain hack and the you Shannon, and look at it from a higher perspective in terms of what's best for you, Shannon, for your team, for the work that you're doing and producing, for the company. What is best for all of that? What advice would you give you, Shannon, if you were to view this whole thing from a higher perspective?
Mm-hmm. The advice I would give me is to really work on being my own biggest fan and being on having my own back. And that means like taking in critical feedback, and not being crushed by it, but being buoyed up by it and learning from it and continuing to be curious.
Mm-hmm. And deciding which of it you take in and which of it you let go. I mean, that's the thing. I think that's the thing about feedback is that from the highest and best good, the best way to deal with critical feedback is to decide how open to be, what to take in, and what to integrate and what to act on, and what to maybe put aside and revisit later, or maybe it just doesn't resonate at all, and that's okay. And that's okay. And that Shannon, the clone one, knows that it's okay to allow some feedback just to stay over there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
maybe she'll bring it in later at a time when she's integrated some other things and she's able to do it. Maybe she'll bring it back in. It might not be gone for good. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Shannon. That was really amazing. So would you like, one last question. If you put that Shannon in for the past 3 months and you went on vacation,
Yeah.
would anything have gone wrong in general in your life? Like we're putting her in at work in general, like all the time. Would anything have gone wrong with her in place?
The Shannon with the partial lobotomy? No, I think it would have gone wonderfully. I think, yeah.
So even though she's not anxious and worrying about things and perfectionism and it doesn't matter. She's still able to produce really great work.
Mm-hmm. I think she would have been able to produce more great work because that part of her mind that is so closed up and worried all the time would have been just free to be more creative and do more deep focused work instead of spend all that time and energy before meetings and after worrying what's going to go wrong and what did go wrong.
So especially now that people are getting so burned out, this is really important because all of that extra energy that's when you're already depleted, when you're already have survived, this last year and a half of really difficult working conditions, this opportunity to let go of some of that burden of worry and anxiety and over preparation and overwork is actually really, really important. I would imagine that Shannon, who has the brain hack, is a lot more rested and able to be more present in her personal life as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I'm going to invite Shannon, not on camera, to go and actually invite the parts of that Shannon in that she'd like to integrate in herself. And I'll teach you one last thing, which is to do, and when she does that, to close her eyes and breathe and do what we call butterfly tapping. This is a technique that calms the mind, especially when you're anxious, because it increases communication between your two brain hemispheres, which creates a very calming effect. So Shannon, once we let you go, then I'd like you to go ahead and do that and integrate that Shannon and invite her to show up more and more in your work.
I'm really excited. Thank you for this brain hack, Kate. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. If you would like to learn more about this, my book is Composure, The Art of Executive Presence, and it's available by composurethebook.com. It comes with its own workbook that you can work through at your own pace. That's free. An electronic version of that is available online, and a printed version is also available. Thank you so much, and we really greatly appreciate you considering how to move from this place of imposter syndrome and a reactive identity into a more resilient identity so you can meet the world, your clients, your colleagues, and your peers with greater composure. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I really encourage you to jump on that journey to composure because the end result is really worth the process and the journey. And I want to thank Shannon so much for being so brave and courageous and so open and generous with herself, and really making it possible for everyone to benefit from your experiences. Thank you so much, Shannon.
And thanks to Kate. Thanks for having me. Thanks for talking about this and for writing about it. Go buy her book, everyone. It's so wonderful. This work has changed my life. So thank you. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you.